Welcome, welcome, welcome. Tonight it is the eighth episode of TransParents. Um, I'm the host, Amber. My pronouns are she, her, and my co host is Jenny Holder. Her pronouns are she, her. And I'll be honest, guys, I'm not sure where my co host is. So she may pop in here, she may not. I don't know. It's going to be a fun one, right? It's already started off at the beginning. Hey, Jeffrey, welcome. Thank you. At least I have Jeffrey here, right? Jeffrey's at least going to keep me company. You can give me feedback, right? While we're in the feed. So tonight's episode, we kind of wanted to talk about um, honestly, we figured we'd look at some vocabulary that we had kind of looked at before, but it's just kind of come to our attention that it's something that needs to be discussed. And it needs to be discussed because there's a lot of information that we hear that gets put out there, right? A lot of misinformation that gets put out there. And there's a lot of people out there putting their opinions out there about what's going on, right, with the trans community. And part of what we wanted to do with this show was kind of unpack some of those things that get mistranslated, if you will. And so with that, tonight we figured language matters. And again, I don't know where my co-host is, who was the English teacher, because tonight's episode is called Language Matters. And it's important because the topics that we discuss or the language that we use can make someone feel included or excluded. It can make someone feel negative or positive. It can be something that makes people feel proud, that makes them feel warm, that makes them feel welcome, or it can make them feel othered, make them feel alone, make them feel outcast. And so we really wanted to kind of break this down, even though we talked about it before, we kind of wanted to break it down a little bit further. So we'll kind of just start off with some of the key terms, right? And so the ones that I broke down in the original post were cisgender. Okay, so this was the deal. There is often a conversation around cisgender and transgender. And I'm a real woman. I'm a biological woman, right? And that is a conversation that gets tossed around a lot. And the reason why that conversation is tossed around a lot is to make trans women feel excluded. That's the truth of it. So let's talk about our terminology. So cisgender. Cisgender refers to people who identify with the sex that they were assigned at birth, whereas a transgender or a non-binary refers to people who identify as different gender than the sex they were assigned at birth. In Latin, cis means on this side, and trans means on the other side, but of the same sex, right? Transgender is when your gender identity differs from the sex assigned to you at birth. A transgender woman had male genitalia at birth, but identifies as a female. A transgender man had female genitals at birth, but identifies as male. Some transgender people may choose to undergo medical procedures, such as your hormone therapy or surgeries, to align with their body, with their gender identity, but it's not a requirement to be considered transgender. And trans is also an umbrella term that includes many different identities and expressions, such as non-binary, gender diverse, gender queer, gender fluid, bigender, agender. There are lots of terms underneath transgender. So let's go back to that real or biological piece. So that's a term that some people use to describe the sex assigned to them at birth, based on certain biological factors, such as their reproductive organs, their genes, their hormones. However, these can be inaccurate, misleading, or offensive. And that's the big one, offensive. That's why we wanted to stress this, because oftentimes it's used to imply that transgender or non-binary people are not real or natural. And a more respectful and inclusive term is sex, is to say sex assigned at birth, right? That's why we say that now, the assigned at birth. The problem comes into when people want to use this as an excuse, as a weapon against the trans community. I follow a follower on Instagram named Honey Ma, and it's where I had gotten a friend of mine actually had sent me several pieces of hers that she had done, so that we could kind of talk about these kind of things. But she talks about a lot of the trans community issues that go on, and so we figure we could kind of piggyback off one another. Actually, plan in the future, Jenni and I plan to hopefully at some point have her on the show to talk more about this. But she does a lot of short clips that honestly are things that we have discussed. And we really, the more like I had looked down, I was like, wow, like she really kind of went into it. And we'll get to what I'm alluding to in a second. So let's finish up. Okay, so gender identity. A gender identity, that's a person's internal sense of being female, male, neither, both, somewhere in the gender spectrum. One's gender identity may or may not match the sex assigned to them at birth. So this is what you feel like, right? On the inside, this is what you feel like. Gender expression. So gender expression is the way a person outwardly shows their gender identity, such as through their behavior, their clothing, their hairstyle, their voice, their mannerisms. Gender expression may or may not conform to social norms that are typically associated with one's gender or with one's sex assigned at birth. So again, it's not necessarily going to look like what you were assigned at birth, right? It could, but it may absolutely not. Gender affirming language. Now, this is language that respects and supports a person's gender identity and expressions such as using their preferred name, their pronouns, and terms to describe their gender. For example, if a person identifies as a trans woman and uses she, her pronouns, gender affirming language would be to call her a woman and to use she, her when referring to her. So that would be gender affirming language. So when I was talking about the actual discussion, let's see, like I said, Jeffrey is here this evening, although Jenni's not. He actually popped that up there before we even gone live. Michael, hey, good to see you. And so what happens with this conversation of real or biological woman is that when a woman stresses she's a real woman intentionally, it's often to exclude a trans woman. It's done purposefully. It's done maybe not maliciously, but it's done with miscontent. You have chosen that you want to step into this argument. And don't want to be called cisgender either, right? And they don't want to be called cisgender because if you're called cisgender, that puts you on the same level as transgender, right? And the whole thing with this group of women that say that they're biological or real is they don't want to be anywhere near trans women. They're a different category. They're trying to other trans women. They want to make sure that you know that they don't fit in. Now, this goes back into opinion and fact, and that's another episode. And we have talked about this a little bit before. But what happens is these women who are cis, they don't even understand at this point. The reaction is that they don't even understand that cis is not a derogatory word. Cis just means that exactly what you were born with, the sex you were assigned at birth is exactly how you feel. That's all it means. That's it. And if you use the word that, for example, for myself, that I'm cisgender, that I'm being inclusive to all, including transgender. Whereas if you just say that you're a woman biological woman, a real woman, you're othering trans women. You're doing that. Like, when did we start walking around with a marker that said woman? I never did. Um, and and that's the thing. The women the women who don't understand the term are also the same women who think that cis is offensive. And the reason why they think it's offensive is because the only time they use the trans label, the transgender label, is to be offensive. They're using trans to be disrespectful. And so to them, they can't wrap their head around cis being okay, because to them, cis should be offensive, because when they use trans, it's offensive. It's meant to other. And again, we've talked about some of the reasons why there is the label. Jenni and I, we talked about, some of that. That's a personal choice. That's an individual choice. We all make that choice of what we want to be called, how we want to identify, what we want people to see us as, right? So whenever anybody comes out and says this is how I feel, that should be a given. It should just be understood. So I wanted to go, and this brings up back in now Oklahoma currently. We've talked about some of the legislation recently in some of the previous shows. And in Oklahoma, the governor, Kevin Stitt, back in 2023, signed an executive order that right now they're trying to bring into legislation, which would be to change the definitions of man and woman, right? And the executive order in 2023, last year, called the Women's Bill of Rights, is an order that defines terms such as female, male, man, woman, mother, father, sex, and natural person based on a person's sex assigned at birth and biological reproductive system. That's going pretty deep into it, isn't it? So this led us into a bigger conversation, which is another one of Honey Ma's tapes, that talks about that trans women are taking away the rights of cis women. This is, again, misinformation. This is, I wouldn't say it's not propaganda, but it's certainly something that people are trying to blow up to make it seem like it's a huge issue. And there is no issue here. So the thought is taking rights from trans women will give rights to cis women and protect them, right? But by creating these laws, a woman, so, okay, what we were getting at is this. So you create these laws that say, all right, so trans women can't go into the bathroom. Here's an example. So last year, when a slew of these laws started being passed across the country, certain things started happening. You started people, especially within the bathrooms. You had people in different states who were suddenly either being called out or arrested or whatever for certain situations where someone, not that they were arresting a trans person, but they were arresting a cis person, a cis woman, or a cis man based on someone else's perception, misperception. And that's what these laws really have created. So in one of these cases, a woman with a double mastectomy gets attacked in a bathroom because people thought she was trans, that she was a trans woman. You created the law to protect all women from trans, right? This woman did exactly what she was supposed to do. She went to the women's bathroom, and she was a victim of trans violence as a cis woman because she had had a double mastectomy because of breast cancer. So a cancer patient or a woman who's had cancer, who's had surgery to remove both breasts, if you don't know what a double mastectomy is, goes into a bathroom and is attacked because someone else assumed she was trans. What you should get through that is women being protected, or so okay, so what women are being protected when a cis woman with ovaries is attacked? Anybody? Anybody? Based on what she looked like, which are what all these bills are, on what someone looks like, their perceived looks. She did nothing wrong and was attacked. It's much bigger than the words man and woman. And as Honey Ma in her video that Jenni and I were basing some of this conversation off said, when someone wants to harm you, they will not check to see if you have ovaries first. They're just going to harm you. So in a way, if you think about it, we have created another way for women to be attacked within the restroom because someone else's misperception is that that could be a trans woman, so we're going to attack her. That's where we're at. That's why it's important. That's why the language is important. That's why understanding that cisgender it just means you were assigned the sex at birth, ladies. That's it. Men, same thing. Sex assigned at birth. That's all. But that includes transgender women in that same category without excluding them when you say, I'm real, I'm a biological woman. But the bigger point is the violence that goes along with this when you start creating the bills, like this woman who was attacked in the bathroom because she was a cancer patient and had 2 breasts removed. People thought she was trans and attacked her. It's a bigger issue. It actually goes so far as, let's go to a bigger issue. So what it really means is again, if you attack a trans woman, it's no difference than attacking a woman. It's now another excuse to attack women. There is no difference. Because that's what they do. That's what, in fact, Jenni and I talked about there are a couple of states that are trying to create an or it's called trans panic defense law. And what it is would be like, oh, I thought they were trans. And so they use that as an excuse to harm. We've seen it with race. We've seen it with homophobia, and trans is a new one. For example, this woman who did nothing wrong, who did exactly what she was supposed to do as a woman. She walked in the bathroom. That was it. Hey, Dr. CJ. Dr. Constance has arrived. I know she was just at a PodFest recently, meeting lots and lots of people. Let's see, where was I in that? Yeah, so when you force, and so this is actually, honey, I made a banner for it because it was so good. When you force trans women to fight to be a woman, you make us all fight to be women. Like, that's the truth of it. When you force women or trans women to fight to be a woman, you make all women fight to be a woman. Exactly what happened in that bathroom. Because if they want to harm you, they're not going to, again, they're not going to check to see if you have ovaries. It's their excuse to attack you. And so now they're attacking people who aren't trans. So you can be met with trans violence and not be trans. And it just goes to the bigger issue that, again, people have such an issue with language, with how other people identify, that honestly isn't any of their business. It's not. Let's see. And again, like I said, if they're going to attack trans women, this is somebody who has issues with all women. This is just another excuse, and one that they hope they can get away with. And when you look at the states that are passing the anti-trans, or some of the anti-trans legislation that they are, those states, those people are going to even feel more entitled that they can get away with trans violence. It's just another way to enact violence. Trans women issues are women's issues. So now cisgender women have to defend themselves as women, even though they are. Transphobia has made it more dangerous for all women, cis or trans. Bills make it more dangerous for all women. All women. Some people will say trans and non-binary, and here is an extra that I threw in there. So some people will say trans and non-binary are new words, right? And so they don't believe that transgender and non-binary exist, right? So I did a little quick little thing. I love this. So here's some other words that you might think that don't exist that are new, right? Cringe, ginormous, Google, Wi-Fi, blog, voicemail, selfie, emoji, ringtone, podcast, cryptocurrency. And just for some reference, records go back to the Copper Age, which is about 3,000 years ago. That's the first actual records that we have of there being more than two genders existing within a people, a culture. 3,000 years ago. It's not new. It's not new. Google is a lot newer than 3,000 years ago. Actually, the majority of those words that I read off are all way newer. Just because there wasn't a label doesn't mean that people didn't exist. That's the big one. That the misconception that, oh, because there wasn't a label, they didn't. So if and I like this one, I don't believe it. That's one I hear a lot. I don't believe it. I don't believe in that. Okay, so I got a question just for the audience, just a little one. Has your opinion ever mounted to everybody else on the planet changing their course of action? So by you saying that transgender doesn't exist, do you honestly think that all transgender people are suddenly going to pack up and leave the planet? Because that's not how it works. It's not how it works. We talked about why the transgender and when the transgender label actually started being used. That was really more to call in medical professionals. It was to call activists and advocates out because of some of the hate that was being spilled into the community, and to bring awareness, to bring support systems. You cry out because you know that this specific community is currently being dumped on. They're being set up as a pawn to take the blame, to take everything right now. That's what's wrong with society. It'll just fix it. I love how little things like this just pop up and, oh, it's going to fix it. It's never been fixed. There's nothing to fix. How you identify is how you identify. Nothing will change that. Nothing anybody says will change what my kid is, what Jenny's son is. Heck, for that matter, nothing anybody's opinion is going to change who I am, what I am, how I identify. You can't change my gender identity because of your belief. Just FYI, this is a conversation I have a lot about their beliefs. Belief will never trump fact, period, ever, ever, ever. And again, that's your belief. I don't care if it's the Pope's belief, Gandhi's belief, Putin's belief. It will not change someone's fact, ever. Nancy, a trans friend of mine is terrified of security at airports if they need to pat down. Yeah, Nancy, security is one that I do hear quite a bit of fear, anxiety. I will say that I have not heard of any bad experiences from the people from any in the trans community that I'm familiar with, or at least they've never expressed it to me. I will say I have not openly asked this question. But I do know that anything that deals with law enforcement, that deals with security, because you don't know, are they going to be supportive, gender supportive, gender affirming or not? And if they're not, they're liable to be really, I wouldn't say nasty, but really disrespectful about it. So yeah, I do understand their fear, quite a bit of their fear. Annie, tell them haters always be haters. Yeah, well, we're trying to change that a little bit. Like, I know that there'll be some people that that I won't be able to change their minds on. But I do think that with the conversations Jenny and I have here, we do hope that it will get more people to do at least more questioning of their own beliefs. It will get them to do more research on their own. I think a lot of times the people who go, I don't believe in that, are often people who don't know anyone in the transgender community, or they've been so unsupportive that if there is someone in their circle, they don't feel safe enough to come out to them. Or it may not even be a question of safety. It just may be like, okay, they're not going to respect me, so I'm not sharing that with them. I'm not sharing this part of my life with them. I think, well, I know as far as my son goes, he's very guarded with certain people and who he shares his information with. Those in his circle, his close circle, certainly he's going to be open with. But most other people, no, including medical professionals, because he has no idea. No idea if you're going to be inclusive. No idea if you're going to be kind, if you're going to be empathetic, if you're going to be compassionate, if you're going to be inclusive, affirming. There's a lot of fears wrapped around all these professional, well, any of the professionals. If you have to go to court, how you're looked at there. I mean, everything, Nancy. Airport, doctor's offices. You really have to think about it everywhere you go. Your ballot box. Brenda Lee's, hola, welcome. Yeah, I'll tell everybody who's here. I'm not sure what happened to my co-host with the mostest at all. I've not heard from her. I sent her the StreamYard link. All quiet, all quiet. So I don't know if she's just got like some kind of emergency or the Wi-Fi's out. I have no idea. I will find out, and it'll be a funny story to open with next week. And she may still pop in. I'm not going to say she's not. There's a possibility she could pop in last minute. I don't know. But yeah, I do think that there is, like I said, Nancy, there's a lot of fear around it, especially when I look at last week and the week before when we did the episodes, or 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, when we did the anti-trans and the pro-trans laws, when I look at all this legislation that's coming out, there are specific legislations that are trying to say that law enforcement, security guards, police officers, the court, that they treat someone as the sex they're assigned at birth for the anti. And then the pro is trying to say, no, that you go by their gender identity. So you do, and because it's being attacked on, or not attacked, but because it's being addressed on both sides, then that tells me that it's an issue that's coming up in those states. And if it's a red state, they tend to follow other red states. I mean, let's be honest. But it's across the country in every state. I wouldn't say this particular bill about law enforcement, but I know that there's bills about how they're housed in prisons, how they're housed in juvenile facilities, how they're addressed when they're arrested, in holding cells, from pat downs, secure, for checks, you name it. They're bills for all of it. So I do see the fear. I hope that at some point, I think it's just going to have to go probably to the Supreme Court level, some case to like finally secure this, that it says, no, we can't do it. Because there's already enough trans hate out there. We don't need our law enforcement encouraging it and carrying it out too. We just don't. We need empathetic leaders, whether it be in law enforcement, whether it be in the courthouses, wherever it is. People are people. We all breathe the same oxygen. We all have blood that runs through our veins. There's no difference. It's not witchcraft. It's not evil. It's not Satanism. It's not demonic. It's not corrupt. It's not any perverse pedophilia, grooming, it's sexual. It's none of these things. It is biology. It's your biology. And we all have the right to identify the way we want to. However we do inside of our skin. Whether it's female, whether it's male, whether it's none of the above, whether it's a mixture of it all. That's kind of the glory of what being an individual is, expressing who we are. And if you take away our gender identity, you're taking away part of who we are. That includes male and female. Teresa, yes, we've talked about this one before. It's what's between our ears and in our hearts that's important, not between our legs. Thank you. I tend to get pretty forceful after a while in the conversation. If somebody is really kind of just, you can tell that they're trying to be deflective, they're trying to be obtuse, they don't actually want to learn, then I do kind of tend to hit them with something more blunt, like, why are you so concerned with what's in my kid's pants? Like, now I'm concerned about you. I'm actually really concerned about all the politicians that are concerned with little kids and what's in their pants. That's an observation. Nobody else has paid attention to that. How they're obsessing over what's in our pants. Specifically, women, what's in our pants. Always comes back to women. Trans women, same thing. Power, control, manipulation. Same thing. So that's what I wanted to talk about tonight. Like I said, about the whole, what's a biological woman, what's cisgender, what's transgender. Cisgender just means it's your sex assigned at birth. And by saying you're cisgender, And like I said, let me break that down for new people that came in here. Again, for the people who, when we sit here and say, oh, I'm a real woman, I'm a biological woman. Again, when we do that, it's excluding this part of the community. It excludes trans women when you say I'm a real woman. And I did. This was, I thought Honey Mom made a fantastic point when she pointed this out, but it is the cisgender women who don't get it. It's because they only use transgender in a negative way, in a offensive way, in a disrespectful way. They want to be nasty. So when somebody calls them a cisgender, a cis woman, they think that you're being offensive because that's all they know. They don't understand that the word is not offensive. It's not, guys. It's Latin. I said it before. Let me go back to it. In Latin, cis means on this side, and trans means on the other side. So, woman in between, cis on this side, trans on the other side. All part of the same gender. But if you go in here and you say that your woman is to other this whole, you don't, it's to exclude. You don't want to be a part. You don't want to be associated with this group. So that is why it's really important that we kind of move to that language of, I would like to see our textbooks move to this kind of language about cisgender, cis woman, cis man, so that we can kind of get used to that vocabulary. If you're not using it, how are you going to be more familiar with it? If you don't educate yourself about it, if you don't learn about it, how are you going to be more familiar with it? When you're sick, so everybody, just about, probably at least everybody watching probably has access to Google. And if you come up with a few symptoms, you start feeling weird, right? You break out with some funny rash. How many of you are popping up Google and popping in your symptoms and going to go look at pictures or going to look at WebMD and to figure out who you are or figure out what's going on with you, right? Like, this is kind of, when you say cisgender and transgender, it's just words. It's just language. But by the way we use, and like I said at the beginning, the way we use language can either include or exclude people. It can be positive or it can be negative. It can be affirming or it can be offensive. It's just a shift in our language. It's not hard. We should want to be more positive, shouldn't we? Shouldn't we? In a world where we're supposed to teach kindness and compassion, that's including everyone at the table. No matter the gender identity, no matter the race, the religion, the politics, you name it. We're supposed to be kind to everyone. So just by shifting our language, this allows the trans community to feel like they are being included, that we do care, that we do accept them. At the end of the day, that's the big one, that we accept them. I want to be accepted. Everybody wants to be accepted. You can't tell me you went to school and you didn't want to be accepted. There was some table you wanted to sit at. There was a club you wanted to join. There was a conversation that you heard your friends giggling about in the hallway that you really wanted to partake in. And this little thing is what pushes you out? Why? I think sometimes it's funny, but I think sometimes, well, I don't think, I know sometimes we make so so many things so much bigger a deal than we really should. This is one of them. Not that they're being discriminated against, but the overkill on the bills, and that we need to redefining what a woman and a man are. Again, by saying that they're transgender men and women, I need to know how that takes away from being a woman, how it takes anything from me or from a man. It doesn't. Do you know how many there are of us? Does it really matter? No. What ultimately matters is what's in our souls. But that's going way too deep for quite a few in our population right now. Because if you can't get past gender identity, we certainly aren't able to get to a conversation about what's in your soul. And I'm not here trying to cast a net and collect souls. I would like people to be more inclusive with their language. I would like them to be more inclusive, period. I also want trans people to feel safe to go to the bathroom. Not even to feel safe, but to be safe. And these bills don't make it safe. I've already said they don't make it safe for any woman. The bathroom bills, it always goes back to the bathroom bills. But I was watching another one of Honey Ma's videos, and she was about talking about bathroom bills. In North Carolina, we started the bathroom bills. Like, we started that so long ago. I think we were that was like the first. That was like some of the first bills ever, I want to say, across the country, honestly, because I feel like that was like early 2000s when North Carolina pulled HB2. That we had to roll back because we lost billions of dollars in revenue because sporting events and concerts and major corporations would not come to our state because we weren't inclusive. We were discriminatory. And that, again, it goes to the language. It's only about language. How hard is it to use a different word? We shift our language all the time. If someone gets married, we go from Miss to Mrs. It's not a big deal. You get a doctorate, or you become a professor. You can go by doctor, you can go by professor. These are titles. At the end of the day, that's all they are titles. We all wear a different title. If you need to have a title, but the cisgender or the transgender, we use those so that it's all inclusive within that same gender. There's nothing offensive with the word cis. It's actually more inclusive when you use that language. It shows you care. And there's enough hate going on out there that we really, you do need to care. Specifically women. I already named off one case where a cis woman was attacked because she was a cancer patient. She'd had double mastectomy, gone into a restroom, and someone assumed she was transgender, and they attacked her. So now cis women are attacked and have trans violence as well because of the anti-trans legislation we're creating and the anti-trans rhetoric that's just everywhere you look, whether it be on your social media, whether it be in newspapers, whether you're hearing it from your school board, whether you're hearing it from your church, the politicians, you're hearing it from everywhere. There's no new onslaught of people coming out and suddenly identifying as something new. No. The trans community's been here. Non-binary, they've all been here. Whether or not they felt safe to live their lives the way they chose, that's a different question altogether. Currently, we've gotten to a stage, I believe, in history right now where there are enough people who are going, no, you know what? I'm not going to hide anymore. Why should I hide who I am? There's nothing wrong with it. It's no different than identifying cis. We all get to show up the way we want to show up. We preach that on LinkedIn all the time about be authentic, be who you are, flaws and all, accept yourself, love yourself, be yourself. And then we tell the trans community, don't. Specifically, our children, don't. Something's wrong with you? No, it's not what I did. It's not what other parents of trans children do that I know. Conversion therapy is horrific. I know that's being passed around some states. No. And that's when you start talking about what is what is discriminatory. That's discriminatory. You're telling someone that the way you feel on the inside isn't right. Who are we to decide that? Everybody gets to choose that for themselves. And I understand that some people don't understand that, but that's not an excuse to other them. It's not an excuse to say that they can't exist. It's not an excuse to be disrespectful. We're not going to get anywhere in this society if we don't start having some conversations. I mean, real conversations. Not what you eat for dinner, not what did Tommy do at school today, but true conversations about how we treat people, how we want to be treated. And then we need to educate ourselves and get to the ballot box and make sure you vote for people who are going to protect the trans community, who are going to uphold human rights, who are going to protect dignity. That's all this is, dignity, respect. And because it doesn't fit into the agenda of some politicians, it's become the drumbeat of the last 2 years Congress session in every state and at the federal level, the national level. All the trans community wants to do is live, eat, breathe, go to the bathroom, go to work, do the same things we do every single day, and should be able to. They should be able to. My mother and I had a discussion recently about my son, and I've got a couple of friends of mine in the area who are trans who have recently lost their jobs and now looking new employment, and they're struggling. And that's with a work history. And my son doesn't have one. And all I can think is how hard this is going, the uphill battle he's going to have just trying to find a job because of the state I live in. We should all be able to just go find a job if you want one. You should be able to go get a loan if you qualify, but you should be able to go get a loan without that being something that you can be discriminated against. It shouldn't matter what bathroom. It shouldn't matter the pronouns. We should just respect people and meet them where they're at. That's what we want, is to be respected and to be accepted, to be included. Like I said, that's every kid. That's all we ever wanted, right? We wanted to be a part of the club. There was something you wanted to be a part of that you were excluded from, to identify with this feeling, just to get a little idea of what the trans community feels like. There was something you wanted to be a part of as a kid that you got cut out of. And that's what they feel like about everything in their lives right now. Jeffrey, I'm with you. Why is that asking so much? I don't really know. I don't know. It should not be asking too much. It isn't asking too much. It really isn't. To love humankind, to be accepting to other human beings. Yeah, I scratch my head over it. I really, really, when I listen to some of the nastiness that comes out over some of these conversations about whether you're a real or biological woman, and it's nasty. It is. It's just absolutely nasty. And it is the whole. Yeah, no, the women who are so up against the cis, yeah, that's what it is. They don't want to be included in the same category as transgender women, and so therefore they don't understand cis. They think it's offensive because they use trans offensively. They use it to other that population, right? That's how they other them. And so for them, when someone turns around and uses cis on them, they don't get it. It's just like, what? No, that's don't call me cis. It just means you were assigned sex assigned at birth. I'm hoping that by the end of this episode, everybody's really, 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 really clear that nothing wrong with cis, with the word, with what it is, identifying as cis, none of it. It again, it's an identity, but we use it so that we can be inclusive to the trans community, so they feel included as well. Because again, some people's kids, yeah, Jeffrey. Ooh, I wish it was just kids. That's honestly the harder part of that. It's not even kids. It's way more adults than it is children that have an issue with this. I would say kids are the most accepting. They've not been programmed yet by society. Not saying that they don't have some influences, because they do. But I just feel like when they're in school, they definitely, like, as far as like at school, they are probably much, much, much more accepting than they are possibly in their home environment. And I'd say that's before, like I said, you get all these rules of society and all these expectations, right, that you're supposed to meet and that everybody's supposed to meet. That's an upcoming episode. Stereotypes and expectations. Some people's middle-aged kids. Yes, Jeffrey, this one. That's the comment. Yes. Some people's middle-aged kids. I would agree. That one I agree with wholeheartedly. Unfortunately, I was one of those for a little bit. Not middle-aged, but my 20s. But I have unpacked that and tossed that. And yeah, I wouldn't have I think I would have eventually understood this, because it's more of a, I guess, a science, biological terms, biology. I was in nursing school. So like this would have, like, still, I don't think I would have rejected this. Like when somebody trying to have the conversation with me that I was cisgender, I don't think I would have like rejected it. If it had been explained in that context. But I do know that I probably would have been very suspicious of the word back then. Very much so. So I get it. I do. Part of the show, the reason why Jenni and I wanted to do the show is so that we could educate, but that for people who didn't have experience with trans kids, who didn't have experience with anyone in the trans or non-binary community, that you got a little bit more insight, a little closer to the subject. Again, we're not professionals. I'm not a doctor. I'm a health advocate, and I'm just sharing information and experience here. Jenni and I do a little bit of research, definitely when I'm like pulling out my bills, legislation, and so forth. Terminologies, like we pulled up the dictionary. But for the most part, this is coming from us. If I do have like stats that I really pull out, I will put that in the comments usually. Honey Ma, like I said, she's somebody from Instagram that we followed, and she just had a lot of interesting conversations around the trans community that really, I felt like, if she was willing to do like a little 2-minute little video on it, maybe that merited enough that maybe we should spend more time on that topic. So we took one or two of hers and kind of smashed them together for this episode that Jenni missed the entire thing. And you guys get to, y'all can like be like, Jenni, where were you? Where were you? You could do that. You could do that. Cause yeah, I'm going to get up with her, and unless there's been an emergency, then don't do it. Then don't do it. Cause then I'll feel bad. Oops. So yeah, so really the biggest thing to pull away from this conversation is that there is nothing wrong with the word cis. It's non-offensive. It means that you're sex assigned at birth, and that when you use that term, instead of saying you're a woman, you're a real woman. If you say cis woman or cisgender, then you're just being inclusive for the transgender community. You're not there. That's it. That's it. It's just saying, I see you. You're one of us. You're part of a team. That's it. That's it. Language matters. How we use it can be affirming, or it could be excluding. You can do one or the other. And as hard as things are, as rough as society is right now, at moments people want to tear each other's throats. I don't see any reason why we can't share a little bit more kindness, a little bit more compassion, a little bit more empathy, a little bit more understanding. And I hope that with this show that you guys will be able to get that from Jenni and I, or me when it happens to just be me. Next week, I'm not entirely sure. I kind of wanted Jenni to sign off on the topic before I said what it was. So be looking for that. I hope to actually put that out tonight or tomorrow, for next week's episode. But I do believe it's going to be around Barbie, gender stereotypes, expectations, and speaking more about gender identity and gender expression and how that's looked at within that movie. So yeah, that's next week's episode. And for those of you who are watching, if you're on LinkedIn, every Tuesday I do an audio room called Mama Bear and Supporting Your Trans Child. And I started that room actually last year, well before Jenni and I came up with the idea for TransParents. And in that room, though, what I've started doing now is the Tuesday after this episode, so this coming Tuesday, the beginning of that episode or room will actually be about these topics. And so if you come to the room or you come to the Sunday show and you want to talk about the topics more, then please come on Tuesday nights, because that way you can come on stage and you can have a conversation. You can ask more questions. I know we tell y'all to comment in the comments. We don't always see all the comments at all. And we certainly can't. I can try and respond to them on air in time, but I can't always respond to everything, especially if I can't see it. So this way it gives you the ability to ask me questions in real time and to have a conversation. So that is at 9:00 Eastern on LinkedIn, like I said, on Tuesday nights, Mama Bear and Supporting Your Trans Child. And with that, guys, I guess I'm going to close out since Jenni managed to miss the entire show. I actually am on a show it actually started at 7. I am one of the 2 guests, and so I'm going to be popping over there in like 2 minutes into that show. You can check on my I think this TransParents just went live back on the page, but if you go back a post, you'll see the links for it. It's on YouTube. but it's with Karen Pascal and Joan Williams. And we're, talking about aligning your passion with your purpose. So please join me next week. Thank you guys so much. Jeffrey, Annie, Constance, Nancy, everybody who came this evening. Thank you so much for joining me. And I will see you guys next week. And with that, good night.